dedication to this task. We felt like it was important to meet today to talk about the upcoming summer, and particularly as it deals with our physical examination. So Dr. Harrison's arranged all this, and our staff, Jessica's done a really good job pulling it together. So thanks for being with us today, and I'll stand down and let you guys get on with your work. We felt like it was important to meet today to talk about the upcoming.
Dr. DeLee, we'll begin when you say begin. If you want to wait for a couple more members, we can. And if you want to go ahead and start through the early parts of the agenda, we're ready to go when you are.
All right. This is a called meeting, and the Medical Advisory Committee is now in session. Time is approximately 9:06. On Sunday, April the 5th, 2020, it's being held. The meeting's being held via teleconference with a live stream. Will the meeting please come to order? I certify that a quorum is present. Dr. Jesse DeLee from San Antonio, I've been appointed to chair this committee. Will the committee members and the UIL staff please introduce themselves?
Athletic trainer, Midland, Texas.
Al Hergenroder, pediatric sports medicine, Texas Children's Hospital, Houston, Texas.
Kerry Tanamachi, orthopedic surgeon, Mesquite, Texas.
Marion Hendricks, family practice, Corpus Christi, Texas.
John Puig, primary care sports medicine, Laredo, Texas.
Deanne Kaler, athletic trainer, University of Texas.
Valerie Duran, athletic trainer, North Crowley High School, Fort Worth, Texas.
Fenrich, pediatric cardiology and electrophysiology, Austin, Texas.
I'm Jamie Harrison. I'm UIL staff.
Sam Tipton, Executive Director, Texas Neuro Coaches Association.
Mark Cousins, UIL staff.
Susan Elza, UIL staff.
Jessica Walker, UIL staff.
And Kelsey Wycliffe, UIL staff.
Unless there's an objection from the members, the committee meeting will be conducted in accordance with the 2019-2020 UIL Constitution and Contact Rules and the Robert Rules of Order. Any objections? If not, it's so ordered. If there's no objection, the business meeting and public hearing is on the printed agenda on your screen. I reserve the right to deviate from this order if it becomes necessary. If there's no objections, it's so ordered. Members of the committee, you've been provided a copy of our revised and edited minutes from our September 2019 minutes. Are there any corrections or revisions to those minutes?
I had one under section F, under unscheduled speakers. For the folks that were speaking about not starting earlier, I think the minute should say that the activity should not start earlier than 8:30 a.m. rather than later than.
Any discussion? Okay, well,
There was a minor edit. There was a minor edit that I sent to Jessica. Just one word.
All right. Then
Section A.
And we'll approve the minutes. The purpose of our meeting is to examine the health and safety of students involved in interscholastic activity participation. It is the goal of the committee to work cooperatively with UIL standing committees and the Legislative Council to address sports medicine issues as they impact rules and the health and safety of participants. The committee should also work with other medical and paramedical organizations that can assist us in our efforts. Finally, the committee should develop position statements and guidelines to assist UIL membership in making informed decisions concerning sports medicine issues. Any recommendations from this committee will be presented to the UIL Legislative Council Athletic Committee. The committee will now begin its business meeting. COVID-19. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, life has changed quite a bit for many of us. UIL started suspending its activities. Our original message out was that we were suspending until March 30th. It became evident within just a few days that that wasn't going to work. So then in responding to the available information related to school closures and continual consultation with various state agencies, we suspended our activities with games not beginning any earlier than May 4th. Then the governor's press conference, he closed schools to reopen on May 4th. So we are suspended until we have more information, essentially. What we have committed to is not starting school, if we start school back, not starting school back and immediately having sports competition. Schools will need to have an opportunity to allow students to reacclimate. We don't know what those students have been doing in terms of physical activity during this part of the suspended school time. So we know we're going to provide an acclimatization period of some sort until we have more information about when schools may or may not be in session. It's difficult for us to make any sort of final plans. So we do have plans that would allow us to complete all of our state championship activities for this academic year, should that opportunity present itself. And we will communicate very quickly with schools what those plans include, what all of the various deadlines and otherwise associated with that plan would be. But at the moment, all UIL activities are suspended, and that includes practices, rehearsals, and workouts, at least in person. We are allowing coaches, sponsors, band directors to provide instruction through some remote means, much like this meeting today. So they do have the opportunity to communicate with students, to provide instruction to students, but not on an in-person basis. So we will continue to stay in touch with the state legislature and the governor, the commissioner of education, all of those various entities that come to bear on decisions about school closure. And we are ready to pivot this way or that as needed once we have more information from those agencies. Happy to answer any questions from the committee if you have them.
No questions? Then let's go to concussion information and update.
So as you know, for the current school year, we are collecting suspected concussion data through the context model for Conference 6A schools. I believe you have an updated report that Jessica sent you this morning. And I believe Dr. Bajer is on the line. Dr. Bajer, are you with us?
I don't believe he is here.
Okay, I apologize for them not being here. So I think in summary, what I would say about context is this. There are members of the committee, many of you, who have some serious concerns about the research model and some of the elements of the context data collection project. Right now, we don't have a replacement We do have a legislative mandate to develop a collaboration with UT Southwestern. We do not have a legislative mandate that that collaboration has to be this context project. In the absence of a better solution to replace it, my recommendation would be that you guys allow us to continue to use context for 6A schools only for the coming school year. And I have visited with members of the research team who are members of this committee. And I've also visited in the last few days with UT Southwestern representatives. And I think there has been some miscommunication between the two. And I will try to help facilitate solving that miscommunication and see if we can get the research team from UT Southwestern on with our chair and the other members of the medical advisory committee who are members of the research team. I forget the exact title associated with this project, and see if we can get some very clear recommendations for improving this moving forward.
Do we have a member of the research team, Cullum, or anybody on this call?
From UT Southwestern? No.
Yes. We don't have any representatives from UT Southwestern.
I was under the impression Dr. Bajer would be on the call. He is not. I'll check my text messages to see if he's had a hard time getting in. But I texted with Dr. Bajer yesterday evening, after dark. So I certainly expected him to be on. Dr. Cullum I knew had another scheduled conflict and was not going to be able to join.
Dr. Bajer is trying to get on the call, but he is having issues with the account. I can try and call him on my cell phone and put him on
You
speakerphone.
might see if you can talk him through it.
Okay.
Okay, any committee members have anything to say? Has anybody had communication with the people at UT Southwestern regarding our project since our last meeting?
This is Al Hergenroder. I was forwarded a report and I reviewed it and sent my comments back to Jamie Harrison. So that's the communication I've had, and that's what my response was.
And when was that?
Hold on, Jamie, do you know that the date that I sent that email to you?
It was either the same day or the day after we received a report from them. March 6th is in my head.
Okay.
And I shared your comments with them.
Anybody have any objections to Dr. Harrison's suggestion that we continue this 6A participation for one more year? I might add that I think that's the right thing to do because of all of the confusion that COVID has introduced into the system. Having said that, we as a committee would like to see some changes in this to prolong it past that 1 year. If I'm wrong, correct me.
Hey, Jesse, can you repeat that?
Okay. I have Dr. Bajer on the call, and he is listening to the meeting.
I said that I would agree with Dr. Harrison to extend the participation of 6A schools for a year, to allow this to mature. The insertion of the COVID problem, I think, gives us good reason to extend this for a year. But I think it's important to understand that the committee would like to see some major changes in this project to extend it beyond this 1 year. And if I'm wrong, committee members, please correct me.
Dr. DeLee, this is Hondo, and I agree with your statement. We ought to continue this for one more year. And at our a year from now meeting, we can make a determination if we'd like to continue it. But with the hiatus and athletics and everything, and the lack of reporting, we ought to give it one more year.
Okay.
I completely agree as well.
This is Hunt Bacher. I'm very sorry I had trouble signing in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just heard that comment that major changes would be needed. Is somebody going to discuss those alterations that you would like or send them to me? Because I've not seen anything like that.
Yes, Dr. Bajer, I explained before you were on the call that I think there's been some miscommunication that I will take responsibility for helping to solve. I think it's really important that we get the medical advisory committee members who are members of the, I forget the exact terminology. I'm going to say research team, but there's a list of people in context, and there's, I think, 3 members from the medical advisory committee who are on it, Dr. Hergenroder, Dr. Seals, and Dr. DeLee. I think it's important that we set up some time for those 3 to give you some direct feedback with your research team members so that we can work on making the necessary revisions moving forward. I think they have some healthy suggestions. I think there's been a block between the 2, and I'll take responsibility for helping to remove that block.
Well, I realize that there has been constant opposition, but I have heard not one suggestion for a change. That's why I'm frustrated. And I think if we're going to do that, Jamie, that's totally great. We need Monroe Cullum and Casey Hicks on that call.
Yes, sir.
Well, this is Al Hergenroder. I can make one specific suggestion, is that the outcome of significance is suspected concussion or concussion. And if what we're going to try to do is add to the literature on sports concussions, we have to clarify how that distinction between suspected concussion and concussion is made.
So
This is Dr.
suspicion
Seals.
versus actual diagnosis. Is that correct, Dr. Hergenroder?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. The way I heard you, it is that we need to clarify the difference between a suspicion of injury and a clear diagnosis of concussion.
Right. That's one of the things. I think along the way, other specific suggestions can be made, and I'm going to ask Dr. Harrison to send back previous minutes and see if any of those specific comments were recorded. But that's the one that comes to mind for me.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Dr. Hergenroder, so you know, we have been and will continue going through minutes and put together a summary of comments from the committee related to context since we've been going down this path. We'll have that for you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on the concussions?
I'd like to add that
I hope everybody got the revised that figure 6 that showed the big spike in reported injuries this past season. Again, that's just from August through mid-December. But that was because of the mandated reporting through 6A. And the rest, the other tables are in your agenda book.
The other thing I'd be interested in would be seeing a simple description of the number of reported or suspected concussions, the average number per school. I know 98% have been reported in 6A, or 98% of the schools in 6A have reported. I'd be interested in knowing the mean and distribution of reported injuries during this past fall by school.
Mean and distribution?
Yeah, so for example, If I'd be interested in knowing if 6A, what's the average number of reported concussions in the fall by school? It would give me a sense of I know we are having a hard time collecting the denominator, but it would give me a sense simply in absolute numbers. How many 6A schools have reported 1 concussion, 2 concussion, and so forth? I'd like to see the mean and the distribution on that, even if it's just a bar graph.
Got it.
Any other questions? Now let's move to the cardiac update.
Dr. DeLee, I believe Dr. Hergenroder had something not related to context, but related to concussions. It's item C there. Dr. Hergenroder, do you want to explain that concern?
Yeah, so we cover we cover 3 ISDs here in the Houston area, and one of the providers who's on the scholarship on the concussion oversight committee for one of the local ISDs said the legal team at that ISD was not allowing the return to play to begin until academic modifications were removed. So, for example, a kid would come to see us, make recommendations for academic accommodations or modifications, but at the same time, with increasing evidence that subthreshold aerobic activity enhances recovery by, the most recent report was 3 days. We wanted some of these kids to be able to return to school with accommodations, but also potentially start some subthreshold aerobic activity. So, of course, they could do that outside of school, but the pushback that we were getting from the ISD was they would not allow any activity that could be construed as exercise without lifting the academic modifications. So that was one ISD's approach to this from a legal point of view, but we had 2 other ISDs, and we've had several private schools who have not interpreted or their ISD's approach has been if the physician wants them to do subthreshold aerobic activity and still have academic modifications, that's okay. So the question that we posed was, in the context of Natasha's law, was, is there uniformity to this? My impression is it's really up to the ISD. So if this ISD is chosen to say you cannot do subthreshold aerobic activity until you remove academic modifications, we disagree with that from a scientific point of view, but if that's that ISD's scholarship or concussion oversight plan, then that's their plan. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the MAC to see if others have encountered this, and what we've chosen to do is we work with every ISD to try to work within the context of their concussion oversight committee's guidelines. So it's as much an FYI. I'm not asking the MAC to make an official proclamation, but I wanted to see what other people's experience has been.
And basically have just talked to the school and said, you know, here's how we manage this at all levels of play, children and adults. And I think it's certainly valid in the literature, and we have not had pushback once we, you know, stated that that was no longer standard of care.
Anybody else?
I was going to let you guys know what we do in our district now. This is something that happens at the school level. We do not allow our student athletes. Now, if our concussion oversight team physician doctor allows, again, some of that low key, just riding the bike or something in those first few days or whatever, we can do that. But we actually have in our protocol, they are not allowed to attend practice or games while they are on academic modifications, because honestly, that's a hard sell for teachers. They will not buy into the return to learn portion of it if they, they have academic modifications in the classroom where they have to wear sunglasses and can't take tests and, they have limited homework or whatever. But those same teachers see those kids on our sidelines, yelling and screaming and jumping up and down, and there's balls bouncing and whistles, you know what I mean? So it's a hard sell to the teachers to buy in. So in our protocol, we don't allow them to practice or go games, and it's more of an attendance kind of being with us while they're on academic modifications. But as far as the actual return to play and anything that they prescribe, that we follow.
I think
Anybody else?
this is Honda. We had some guidelines out for return to play that we were basically told that it was going to be up to each individual's concussion oversight team, and we could give recommendations, but the final say is up to them.
Dr. Harrison, isn't that the way that this was intended? It would come down to the individual schools concussion oversight committee.
Yes, sir. The law is pretty clear on that. And I think Dr. Hergenroder did a nice job of explaining that as he introduced this issue. The law has done a lot of great things, but it does limit us in some ways in making recommendations to those concussion oversight teams. It is clear that each ISD adopts a concussion oversight team. That concussion oversight team then determines their return to play protocol. And we at the central UIL, so to speak, don't have the authority to guide them one way or the other. It's a little unfortunate part about the law that, again, overall has done a lot of great things. And I think Dr. Hergenroder did a really nice job of explaining that going in, sort of what are you guys seeing and how can we help without overstepping within the constructs of the law?
Any more comments? Okay, let's move to the cardiac update.
Dr. Fenrich has done a lot of work on this. So thank you to him for really staying committed to this. Following our last MAC meeting, the direction from the committee was to finalize this language, get it on the form so that we could get it out to the schools in time. Jessica, if you want to show us the form, and Dr. Fenrich, if you want to go over, really it's that box on the right-hand side there.
Is there any chance that could be sent by an attachment? Because I'm not on I don't have the visual part of the meeting up on my Zoom.
Jessica, is it in the packet?
Yes, it is in the packet, but I
What
can
page?
resend to whoever needs it sent to.
Yeah, if you'll send it.
I'll need it sent to me too.
Was that part of what was sent around this morning? Or is that in the notebook? I'm sorry, is it in the notebook?
Yes, it's in the full note.
Okay. I just haven't gotten far enough in the notebook. Okay, I'll find it.
Jessica, John Puig, I have not received a notebook.
Okay. I will try and resend that right now.
So, thanks, Jamie. The new box on the form has been mandated by the last legislative session to include the ability for a family, for a parent or a student to check off that they'd like an ECG performed prior to sports participation as an additional cardiac screening. One thing, Jamie, a question that I had is that I'm I think on this box, if we can actually add, because we, additional few words, it's the comment says, I have read and understand the information about cardiac screening. As I look at that more, and I think we probably ought to add in the sudden cardiac death advice awareness form, because that's where the information lies. I had contemplated making another form that they would refer to, but in an effort to try and decrease the forms that they have to review and look at and read, if everybody agrees, I would just direct them to the sudden cardiac death awareness form rather than one additional form they have to review.
I would agree with you, Dr. Fenrick.
So Arnie, have there been any changes to the sudden cardiac arrest awareness form, or that just that form? Have there been any edits that we should look at?
There were no edits or changes to the sudden cardiac death awareness form. That's the same.
Okay, and are you saying then you want to just leave this modification in the preseason exam form as it's presented to us this morning? Is that what you're proposing?
I'm proposing the language there, but my suggestion is that we add to the statement, I have read and understand the information about cardiac screening. I would just reference the sudden cardiac death awareness form or add that to that sentence.
Would you put it at the front?
James,
would you put it?
Something we could.
Go ahead.
I think to say, is that something could we add that language?
Yeah, I almost that exact sentence, right, Dr. Fenrich? Just, I have read and understand the information about cardiac screening on the UIL sudden cardiac arrest awareness form.
Yes.
We can make that.
Would you put that at the beginning of that statement, Arnie?
Well, the thing I want at the beginning of the statement is that an electrocardiogram ECG is not required. I think that's the first thing. We could put that before by checking this box, or rearrange that paragraph a little bit. But I want the comment that it's not required to be first.
Yeah, I think that being the first statement is very effective. Does it say, because I haven't read this SCA awareness form recently, does it say an EKG is not required specifically?
It does. It should be in your notebook that you received. I know it's in there. And there's a whole paragraph about.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that
Repeat what you said, Al.
I just want to make sure that in that sudden cardiac arrest awareness form, it states that an ECG is not required. Does it say that?
It definitely does, and it talks about the false positives and false negatives, and that the AHA and the ACC do not feel it's necessary to make it required. So it goes through all that in the appropriate language.
Okay. Yeah, it says it is. I found it right here. It is not mandatory, and it's generally not recommended. Okay.
Dr. Harrison? Well, go ahead. Go ahead now.
No, I would second what Dr. Fenrich has said, with the addition of, after the first sentence, that I have read and understand the sudden cardiac awareness form.
One of the questions that has come up from several trainers, that if the box is checked that they are requesting an EKG, that means that they are not cleared until the result of the EKG has returned and been read by the cardiologist or by the physician. Does that need to be further explained?
Jessica, Mark, and Susan, help me out here, but I believe we sent out guidance on that several weeks ago, explaining that if the physical form comes back that they are otherwise cleared to participate, they can participate because of the delay sometimes that's involved with having the screen run and sometimes even worse, having the screen interpreted. So we sent guidance on that out, didn't we, Jessica, Susan, Mark?
Yes, we emailed it out to the schools, and we've also put it on our website when they click on the form, if you'd like me to show that.
Yeah, you might pull it up if you can.
And just to add, in addition, we aren't requiring an ECG. I think if we stipulate that if they check this box, they can't participate, it's almost like, okay, now in your son or daughter's case, we're requiring an ECG. We don't require an ECG. We just require the history and physical.
So the guidance we sent out and have posted is on the screen in front of you now.
Yeah, I can't see that. Can somebody send that electronically?
Yes, Jessica will send that to you, Dr. H.
Hey, Arnie, while we're waiting for that, you know, there are some times that we require an EKG. A kid comes in with syncope during exercise, for example. If they check and the EKG is not required, that doesn't preclude that the physician examining them hasn't said you need an EKG, right?
No, that's certainly correct. That the bottom line and whether they do need one or not is in the hands of the physician evaluating them.
Yes, if you can scroll through that a little bit so they can see the rest of it, because I think we even addressed that in this.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for it to come through. Here it is.
Specifically says, Dr. H, the student is not prohibited from participation until the ECG screen is conducted unless the medical professional conducting the physical examination indicates.
Okay.
We actually address what you just asked very specifically in this guidance.
And is this a new document, this athletic and marching band pre-participation physical event? Is this the first time we're seeing this?
Jess, help me out. I believe we sent it to you guys before we sent it to schools.
Okay, I just don't remember. I'm just asking you guys.
Yes, this is the exact email that we sent back in January when we sent out the form. We just took the exact language from the email and popped it onto a website so that it was all in one place.
Okay, and you got feedback from everybody that this read well?
Yes, I believe this whole email was sent to the committee stating we were about to send this out to the schools.
Yes, we did not get any suggestions for change. Had we received those, we certainly would have implemented them.
Okay.
I think if you look at these two documents, the obvious concern that you would have would be if the parent checked the box and did not get the EKG, or the interpretation and getting the EKG was delayed and something happened to the student in that window. Last sentence on the form is pretty clear that that's basically the responsibility of the parent. Is that true?
Yes, sir. That is true. And the law actually provides some protections for both the UIL and individual schools in the event of an unfortunate happening you just described. One of the things we fought for in the law to make sure that we weren't setting a trap for schools and for the UIL.
Okay, any more comments? Okay. Next
Just
item,
agenda.
the legislative update.
Legislative update. I don't have much of a legislative update for you at all. It will be very interesting following all of the goings on related to the coronavirus and what COVID-19 what role it might play in future legislation. The one piece of potential legislation that I'm aware of that I need to let you guys be aware of is there is one state senator who is interested in a law that would require the use of wet bulb. What is the wet bulb globe?
Yeah, temperature reading.
The temperature
For humidity.
I'm working with them or was prior to all of the statewide closures, but I will continue to work with them to make sure they have the data that we believe is really pretty impressive on the lack of heat related issues over the last 2 decades, with all of the training and other restrictions that this committee has put in place to help protect kids, and just how geographically diverse and large our state is. And it becomes very difficult when you tell schools in a certain area that happens to be more humid than others that they can't practice football today while everybody else can. That becomes very problematic. So, we've got a lot of other restrictions to help make sure that practices are moving safely. We have some data to support that those restrictions have been remarkably effective. So I'll continue to work with them on that and keep you guys updated as we move forward.
All right.
Sounds good.
Medical forms, pre-participation physical review. We've reviewed the forms. I think the real hook here is postponed physicals due to the COVID-19 closures. We've talked at length about this in preparation for the meeting, and some variation of the following I think would be reasonable, and that is that we still require the physicals for 7th graders, but 9th and 11th graders who are due for a repeat physical exam are not going to be able to get them done in time for the fall semester. My suggestion would be that for the 9th and 11th graders, if they had that 7th grade physical exam, and this is just a repeat, that they just fill out the history form. And if there's a question on the history form, then they're required to go get a physical.
And until the schools reopen and we're back under normal circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any possibility that we return to school in the summer?
I suppose there's a possibility of it. I don't anticipate that. This school closure is different than any other school closure we've experienced in the past, in that schools are really not closed. They are physically closed, but they're continuing to deliver instruction. Kids are still going to school. They're just not at school. They're doing it at home through a variety of remote instruction models. So that being said, having attended almost every conference call the commissioner is holding statewide with superintendents on a daily basis, I don't anticipate makeup time necessarily in the summer. I think schools are fulfilling their obligations remotely. So I really don't think that'll happen during the summer. The biggest question is whether or not schools will go back during the regular scheduled academic year. I think there's growing skepticism that will happen, but right now the governor has only closed schools through April 30th, reopen on May 4th.
Jamie, do you know whether the school districts reimbursement for the state for daily attendance by students is going to be met by this virtual classroom?
The intent is that it will be met by that. There is an attestation that each superintendent will have to sign, attesting that they are delivering instruction in some way to students remotely. And in such case, the student is counted present.
Okay.
I believe if they tried to change it to the summer month, that would require a constitutional change, because as of now, there's a specific date in June that the school has to end. So there had to be a special extension if that occurs.
So if I could summarize, the recommendation that I think I heard is that essentially students who have had a physical before, for the coming school year, they're okay unless their medical history form indicates they need a physical. Students, incoming 7th graders are the best example, who have never received a physical will need to get one. So we have drastically reduced the demand on the medical profession and the demand on schools to get those for the coming school year. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, sir.
Until normal school activities are resumed, and then we need to go back to business as usual whenever, you know, schools reconvene. We need to go back to what we were doing before.
Is there any concern that if schools were to reconvene, for example, on May 4th, which is the current reopening date under the governor's order, that the medical community might have a hard time conducting those physicals? Is the medical community otherwise occupied?
I think there's, go ahead, Al.
I can tell you, just because somebody decides that school's open again, that they're completely out of touch with what's happening in the medical community. I mean, we're in a different universe in the medical center. So the notion that on May 5th, if school's open on May 4th, May 5th, we're going to be open for business, that's just impractical. We would then have to sit down with the schools and, you know, figure out how we could do this, because, you know, there are parts of the state. I mean, I don't know what it is in everybody else's county, but in this county, we have, you know, strict self-quarantine. And until our county judge lifts that, there's going to be significant restrictions on what schools can do and parents can do, and then our ability to mobilize. So I can't say how we would react. We would try to mobilize, but I don't know if we would get that done before the school year.
I don't think that's practical. I think if we're going to make this change, we make it now, regardless of what happens. Somebody's saying the schools are open, because there's going to be a huge amount of pent-up demand for medical care. And physicians are not going to be available to do this under the current situation.
Realistically, we're looking until August or September before.
I agree. I think we
us
need
as
to
a
make that
medical
decision
community.
today and let it stand through the rest of next school year.
There.
I agree.
I agree with what Dr. Lee's proposal was, and it count through the end of the 2021 school year.
Yes, I agree too.
If I could ask for one more clarification, and I don't mean to indicate that they are in any way different, but the newest grouping of students that we've added to the pre-participation physical overall community is marching band. So are we saying the exact same thing applies to marching band? Marching band kids, you don't start marching band till the 9th grade. So their 7th and 8th graders have never had physicals. So all of the marching band freshmen would be in the need a physical pool, unless we're going to make an exception for marching band for the coming school year.
If we've made the assumption that the risks of marching band are the same as the risks of other athletic endeavors, I think they have to fall under the same rule.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think COVID changes that. You know, the other thing to take into consideration, Jamie, is this incoming group of ninth grade band members. There could be a provision, well, I don't know if provision's the proper name, but there's no reason why they can't fill out the history form online, for example, and send that into the school. And if 1 through 6, as it states, has a yes answer, then they can't participate until they have a physical evaluation. If that's all negative, it could seem to me that they could at least have a provisional clearance to start band practice if 1 through 6 on the questionnaire form are negative.
Dr. DeLee, this is Charles brought up. I just want to comment on that portion that Dr. Hergenroder has presented. I think that makes more sense in relationship to the fact that band starts before anyone else. They'll start early July. And our schools, obviously, if they don't come back, really won't have an opportunity to get physicals before the end of the school year. I believe that with a medical history form in place, that would cover those incoming ninth graders in band for this year. So if we could do that, that would help, I believe, everyone and not cause any panic in any level. So I think that's a great suggestion, using the medical history form for band for those ninth graders for this year.
And
now let me ask a question.
Exactly how is a ninth grade band member different than a seventh grade athletics member if we assume that the requirements we've laid out for them are the same?
I would say they're not different. We ought to require that for the incoming seventh graders for other sports.
So does that change?
Now, if it's possible to locally perform physicals, say in August or September, would that be frowned upon if we're able to do them?
No. I don't think it would. I think it's always a good thing to get checked out medically. The question is whether or not we require it. So if I may ask, has the recommendation changed now for incoming seventh graders? Are they required to get a physical, or are they only required to get a physical if their medical history form indicates such?
And as long as we're under this COVID restriction, we're trying to make an accommodation. And I think that if school is opened again and it's business as usual comes the fall, then we go back to how we've been doing things. But as we go into the summer without clarity, my recommendation would be for an incoming seventh grader for all sports and ninth grader for band, if they fill out that medical history form 1 through 6, for example, and it's all negative, that until a physical exam is able to be done, they would be cleared for band and sports activity until they can obtain a physical exam. That would give them a provisional clearance until they can get in to get a physical.
I almost think doing it for the whole school year might be a little bit extensive, but maybe considering doing it through the end of this year, through the end of December 2020.
What I might recommend, and we've kind of learned this as we've gone down this path of suspending our activities, is we might say all students complete a medical history form, any student, 7th grade, 9th grade band student, any student at all. If your medical history form indicates that you need a physical now, you are not cleared until you get that physical. If you have a clean medical history form, then you are provisionally cleared to participate until the physical can be conducted. And then we at the UIL will communicate out to schools, now's the time to start doing physicals. You are good until we let you know you're not. And if that is—
So who's going to be reviewing these forms?
The schools.
So that
Okay,
will lie
so
on the
I'm—
athletic trainers?
Yes, I was just about to say, I'm going to have to go through 2,000 medical histories and decide, because here's the issue is you're talking about them being eligible one day and not the next in the middle of a season. Like when do y'all decide, okay, now we get started? And so when do I start pulling them because they don't have it?
Yeah, that's problematic. This is Charles again. We have the winter season sports begin you know, middle of October. And every one of those individual sports have begun, then now you have to stop and get
Yeah.
a physical. If you don't get a physical, you can't continue to play. That's going to be problematic for everyone.
I think if we make this decision, it ought to stand to the end of May of 2021.
I agree.
And that was Dr. DeLee's recommendation. Is that not right?
Correct.
Yeah, I thought that's what I heard. I think that makes more sense.
It does.
Okay, so can somebody restate the proposal?
Let me withdraw my proposal, and then someone can present the new proposal.
I believe the new proposal should read as this: all incoming 7th graders who haven't had a physical will present a school health history form to be reviewed. And if any of the indicators are in a negative way, they must receive an athletic physical before they can participate. All other students who have currently had a physical and incoming 9th grade band directors, marching band students should fill out a new health history form, should be reviewed by appropriate staff, and if there's any indicators, they should be referred for a screening. If not, they are eligible to participate until the end of the school year of May of 2021.
Yeah, I'd go along with that.
I'm in.
good with that as well.
Sounds great. Thank you, Hondo.
Any other discussion?
Would there be encouragement to actually get a physical if we do return to business as usual prior to the start of the fall semester?
I believe I would let that be a local decision.
Yes.
If we're going to make this as a statewide proposal as we did, if this local district can perform it, I think we're going to leave that up to them until the end of next school year.
Fair enough.
Anybody else have discussion?
I actually have a question as far as extending like that. What about certifications for educators? What about CPR certification for coaches, tackling certification? I mean, if all that stuff is up, like let's say in May, end of May, but they are having the short sanctioned practices over the summer, are they still allowed to do that without those certs?
My recommendation would be no, that they can get those online. They have plenty of time during this downtime that they have to get those done. And we're encouraging our staff to provide the education materials that they need to get certified. So my recommendation is that they continue all their certifications.
Perfect. That's what I needed to know.
And I agree with that. And Valerie, as far as the ADVIS, we're in a year that's only new hires that would have to complete the ADVIS certification and all that. So, but I agree, all of that needs to remain.
Perfect.
Anybody else have any comments? My comment is pretty much the same, and that is I'm pretty nervous about admitting 7th graders to contact sports without a physical exam. So everybody's had their say. Let's vote on the proposal as outlined by Hondo. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor.
Aye.
Okay, I'm the standalone.
Aye as well.
So it passes. All right, next. The Federation update.
Dr. Cousins.
Yeah, included in your packet, I put the agenda for the National Federation Sports Medicine Advisory Committee meeting that's coming up April 25th through 27th. They haven't made a decision yet on whether they're going to do that electronically or whether they're going to cancel that or how they're going to handle it. But there's really nothing different on the agenda than they usually have. Then I also included in there the reports from the October SMAC meeting is what's going on across the nation as far as the state reports on those activities. A couple of interesting things from there. There's a lot of states out there that are putting together what's called a pregame preparedness timeout meeting with the officials, the home coach, the visiting coach, and administrators, basically to talk about safety issues, emergency action planning, what safety resources are available, where the AEDs are, who's going to be in control of the weather, and those kind of things. So that might be something we look at and determine and talk about whether that's something we want to look at as well. It's just a way for the people at that contest to get together prior to the contest to make sure everybody's up and aware of all the safety resources and things that are available for that contest. And then just like us, the concussion reporting and education are continuing to be a big issue nationwide, as well as emergency action plans, cardiac issues. One of the things you're seeing a lot more nowadays across the state is opioid abuse education for students in schools. And then the American Academy of Pediatrics finally published their 5th Monograph Ppe. There's a lot of discussion among states looking at that. We've looked at that before. It's actually a very detailed monograph and a really long process for those physicals. And I think in the past, when we looked at those, we felt like the form and process that we had worked best, and can certainly look into that a little bit more if we feel like it's necessary. But y'all can look through that information and see if there's anything that we want to get a little bit more detail about.
Mark, one of the items that I think the American Academy of Pediatrics is going to recommend is screening for depression and suicidal ideation. And I'm not on that committee, but if somebody asks my opinion, I would say that should not be included as part of that preseason physical exam. And when I say that, I say it by also adding I'm board certified in adolescent medicine, and I'm the service chief for adolescent medicine here, and so I see kids with suicidal ideation on a near daily basis in my various clinics. So I'm very concerned about adolescents with depression and suicide. I just don't know that the preseason exam is the format or the context to be screening for that. Because if you're screening the whole football team and somebody says, yes, they're depressed, then you have to have an action plan, which includes somebody has to be with that kid. They may have to go to the emergency room, et cetera, et cetera. So my recommendation at first reading of that or hearing of that is that we not endorse that as our next preseason exam form review comes up, that we not include those screening questions. With the understanding, am I concerned about depression and suicide? Absolutely. I just don't think the sports physical is the place to screen for that.
Yeah, we can certainly keep that in mind. And that is one of the other things, if you flip through those state reports, education on mental health and those kind of things outside of the physical examination process, just in general, that topic is coming more to the forefront across the nation, not just with state associations, but particularly in schools themselves. I mean, we've even seen some schools here in Texas that are actually hiring mental health personnel to put on their campuses to deal with that, because that's certainly not just an extracurricular participant issue. It's a student issue. And like a lot of other things that we deal with, it's public health issues, not necessarily just issues that are directly related to student athletes and participants.
Any other comments? All right, injury update. Jamie?
In previous meetings, the committee asked us to create 2 reporting opportunities for schools, one on catastrophic injuries and one a form that would be filled out anytime there was an AED intervention used in conjunction with the UIL activity. So we have a couple of examples of those in your packets. I believe you have all of them. But to go through the examples so you'll know what we have up and how it's being reported back to us. Jess, if you'll show them there is the aggregate. Those are all of the AED, it's all of you. We had 2 AED reports and 4 catastrophic injury reports come in. And then individually, here's what those look like. Mark, if you want to walk them through anything, feel free.
Yeah, generally what y'all saw these forms before we actually put them out. And so this is just an example of one of the ones that we've got. It was a student that had a heat exhaustion issue during football practice at Alvarado. It is pretty much, except for the reporter, pretty much de-identified, which is one of the things that we talked about making sure was in there. And you can see, Jess, if you scroll down a little bit further on there, we give the opportunity for the individual to give us an actual report of what occurred. And you can see in this scenario, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. The student had a heat issue. They had a cold tank or water tank available to dump. They dumped the student in the tank, did end up transporting them to the ER, and the student did recuperate and was able to eventually come back to participation. And then Jess, if you go to the next one, this is an example of the AED form that was created. And you can see this was on in December of 2019. And looking at that information, the specific questions that were asked about the incident itself, and if 911 was activated, what the basic situation with the student was. And then as you go a little bit further down, it talks about even the number of shocks that were provided, and did the EMTs have any issues or concerns trying to get to the facility or to the individual. And so we haven't seen a ton of these come in, but with our new rules in place as far as requiring those reporting of catastrophic injuries and AED use reports, we feel like and we do keep watch online to see, we think we got most of what occurred, but we don't think we have all. These are just a couple of examples in your notebook. There are a few other ones that we put in there as well, but these were just a couple of examples of what comes in when those reports are submitted by the schools.
Mark, what is our definition of catastrophic injury that has to be reported?
We use the definition from the National Center. Jess, if you go to the top of that catastrophic injury report form, go to the top, we use the definition from the National Center for Catastrophic Sports Injury Research. And it's defined as a fatality, a permanent disability injury, serious injury, such as a fractured neck or serious head injury, even though the athlete has a full recovery, temporary or transient paralysis, and then heat stroke due to exercise, sickle cell trait associated collapse, sudden cardiac arrest or death, commotio cordis, and severe acquired cardiac illness. So we basically stole from the National Center for Catastrophic Sports Injury research on our definition, just so it would be similar to what we have nationwide in that situation.
So the example we were given was a heat exhaustion, not a heat stroke. So it really wasn't in the catastrophic category.
Yeah, I think if you go and look at the reports that we have, I don't think all of them necessarily meet the strict definition of catastrophic. I think a couple of them do, but not all of them. But just for reporting purposes, we wanted to be as transparent as we could to make sure that when we do get these, that we are importing them, even if they don't necessarily meet the strict definition of the injury.
I think it would be a good idea for this committee to review those at their meetings, just to get a look at them or a summary of them.
Our plan is to bring these to the meeting every time. So these were just from the beginning of the school year when the rule went into effect until now. And then when we meet again in October, anything that occurred after this meeting up until October, we do plan to bring those to the committee.
Okay, good. Any other
Can I
comments?
just ask, will all this information? Yes, my question is, will all this information be archived in some place where it can be retrieved in the future? I'm really happy with the AED form and the fact that in the future, people are going to ask, what are you doing? What are you doing to protect students and prevent risk of sudden cardiac death? And we have two occurrences of a use of an AED. One was a student and one was a coach, and both successfully terminated their arrhythmia and both survived as a result of it. And I think it's important information to have moving forward.
Yes, we do have the ability to archive these, and we will keep them on file. They are submitted electronically, so there's really no paper involved. And yes, we do have the ability to archive and keep those, and that is our plan.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, I'm looking at the form. What is Sportsline software? Is that, do we have a contractual relationship with them, or I'm not familiar with that business?
They
Jamie?
power our portal. All communications between UIL and schools go through the UIL portal, and they built they built that. They're not a medical reporting company.
Okay.
They're just a software development company. So we use them for a number of different things. And we collect reclassification, realignment data, for example, a number of items that communication between schools and UIL all goes through the portal.
Okay.
High School Rio.
Yeah, High School Rio is the national high school reporting format for injuries. Y'all had asked us to gather some information from them in reference to the number of schools that were Texas schools that were participating in that. I had an opportunity early this week to talk to Dr. Dawn Comstock at the University of Colorado, Denver, who for the last, 12 or 13 years has been the person in charge of Rio. She reported to us that currently for the 1920 school year, there are 6 athletic trainers in Texas that are reporting as part of their program. Last year, there were 5. From the overall report that she gathers across the nation, there's around 175 or 200 athletic trainers that are involved in providing information to Rio on a weekly basis throughout the year. 80% of the schools that they represent are public and 20% are private. She said there used to be a higher reporting number from Texas, but once we started moving to the context and the concussion reporting system, they did see a drop in the number of Texas trainers that were participating. But for the 1920 school year that's going on right now, there are 6 trainers from Texas that are enrolled and participating. Last year, there were 5. They do a really good job of putting those reports together. We get those, and those are electronically available. If the committee is interested, we can provide those. Some of them are extremely lengthy. Dr. Comstock and her group does a really good job and has a really good longitudinal study of those. That's probably one of the biggest and longest running high school injury gathering studies that there is. I know that there's been some discussion with them of changing over some of that to Daedalus, which is the same company that does the injury gathering for the NCAA and the college level. I don't know for sure if that's been done yet, but Dr. Comstock and her group up at Rio do a really good job of gathering this information for high schools across the state. And y'all had asked to get some information from Texas, and so that's what we were able to gather.
I'd love to see that information.
Okay, we can. I can look at pulling the website link for that. I'll send it to Jessica, and she can send it out to everybody.
Right, not for the nation. I'd be interested in seeing it for Texas.
Well, I don't know if I have to go back and check. I don't know if they'll specifically pull it out just by state, just because of some of the issues that she has in her IRB. She wouldn't even tell me who they were or what schools they were. So I'm not sure that she's able to do that, but I can certainly make that request.
Okay, well, if it's the national data, I'd love to see that too.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Mark, do they pay to participate in this?
They do. I mean, it's a really small. I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I think at one time it was like $100 or $125 that she was able to pay those reporters. And it is a pretty lengthy process and a pretty involved process. So they've done a really good job over the years of streamlining it, but it is a very detailed process. And so she does compensate those. And I think at one point it was somewhere around $100 or $125. It may not even be that high anymore, but I can try to gather that data as well when we send it out. But yeah, there was some compensation for the athletic trainers that were involved, because it is a process to which you have to be dedicated, because they do it pretty much year round throughout the school year. And they do it for a number of different activities. And the reporting process is very detailed.
Now, my question was, does the school pay a fee to participate in this program?
No,
what
they
you said was that she pays the trainers to file the information, but is there for want of a better term, is there a registration fee for the school?
No, sir.
Dr. DeLee, this is funded by the National Federation Foundation. And I believe Dr. Comstock has sold her business to another company. So we may be seeing some changes on that as we move forward.
I'm a bit confused. It sounded like this was an IRB through the University of Colorado, Denver,
It was.
but she owned something she sold.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the ownership piece. I know there is some discussion of Daedalus, which is a company that the NCAA uses on their injury reporting system, of taking it over. I don't know the ins and outs of who owns what or how all that works, but I know that there is some transition going on in reference to how that information is going to be gathered and who's going to be in charge of it. I just don't know the specifics.
Okay. Any subcommittee issues?
I have none.
Anybody?
None.
Okay. Any new business?
Dr. DeLee, I'd just like to thank the committee for their time in this really challenging time, especially for the medical field. And I would like the committee to know that UIL staff is very open to, only if needed, which I'm certainly not suggesting it will be, but only if needed, as we go through this COVID-19 journey and get hopefully towards the end of it, if we need to pivot on some of this, we'll work through the chair and decide if we need to have a meeting that it does not fit our normal meeting schedule. We're open to that if needed. Hopefully it won't be.
Dr. DeLee, I would just like to comment again. Thank you so much for your leadership as chair of this committee. I know you're in numerous conversations with Dr. Harrison throughout the year, particularly if we have issues that come up. But thanks to every one of our committee members for their dedication to this process and the health and safety of not only our athletes, but our marching band students. I want to say thanks too for our staff, particularly Jessica, for all the work that she's done in preparation for the meeting and for providing all the resources that we need to get this done, and to the athletics staff and for Dr. Cousins and what he does for eligibility purposes, but his work with the National Federation. We're very thankful for our staff. They've been right on point during this shutdown of schools. They're working every day. Dr. Harrison conducts daily meetings through Zoom with our senior staff, and Dr. Elza's meeting every single day with her athletic staff, and they've come up with several iterations of plans for return. We're anxious to be able to get back, but we're not going to come back before our schools do, and they may not return. So we're ready to move forward in whatever direction that is needed. But we're thankful for your support, and if we can do anything to help you, please let us know.
I want to reemphasize the thanks that the committee has for Jessica. This meeting came off really without a hitch. And I think for a first time meeting on Zoom for this committee, that's pretty remarkable. So thank you for your efforts, and thank the committee members. My only concern was, I told Jessica, we don't know how to have a virtual breakfast.
Yeah.
And the cook that I have here is not quite as amenable as the one at the hotel.
Jessica, Mr. Chairman, we typically would discuss dates for our next meeting at this point. We have a 30-day posting requirement. If we're going to make any rule change through the Legislative Council, we have to post that rule change 30 days out. So I believe if we want to stick with a Sunday schedule, which is our usual, we would likely be looking at September 6th. Let's see if I can figure out how to read my calendar. September 6th or 13th. Is that right, Jessica?
That's correct. Yeah.
I think the 6th is Labor Day weekend.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to do it the 6th.
So does the 13th work for everybody?
Yes.
Good for me.
Yep.
Works for me.
And if possible, would we maybe be meeting in July or August?
If we need to have a meeting that doesn't fit our normal schedule, UIL staff is certainly ready to do so, and we would organize that through the chair.
Dr. Harrison, what is our quorum of MAC members that needs to be present for such a meeting?
Anything 50% or higher.
Okay. So if we do get in a jam and people are not able to, we should be able to meet the 50% requirement, I would think.
I think so. And so the committee members know if we had to do that, I would work very closely with Dr. DeLee, and we would do our best to reach out to those who knew they were going to be unable to attend, share with them all of the information that will be discussed, get feedback from them that Dr. DeLee will share with the group on your behalf.
I will be able to attend any meeting given a 1 week heads up.
You'll get at least 1 week heads up because we have a 7-day posting requirement. So we have to post it 7 days prior to the meeting anyway. So you'll get it at a minimum a week's heads up.
If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's go quarantine.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone.
All right.